Next, there are warnings the risk surrounding Russia's shadow fleet of oil tankers is escalating. Maritime authorities are reporting a sharp spike in vessels sailing without a valid flag, which could mean they aren't insured for an accident or a spill. Seaborne energy exports continue to generate billions for Russia as the Kremlin wages war in Ukraine.
Let's be honest, we've seen Putin survive sanctions, we've seen him survive battlefield embarrassments, we've seen him survive isolation. But what is happening right now in the Baltic region? This is not another round of sanctions. This is not stern warnings. This is something much more dangerous. Because for the first time in years, Russia is not just being pressured. Russia is being physically boxed in. Like, imagine locking a lion inside a steel cage, then calmly turning around and throwing away the key right in front of the lion. That is what NATO is doing to Russia's western flank right now. And the scary part, this trap didn't snap shut with one dramatic explosion. It snapped shut quietly, strategically, like a noose tightening, one pull at a time. Let's start from the symbol of Russia's pride, St. Petersburg. The city Peter the Great built as Russia's window to Europe. For centuries, that window mattered. It wasn't just about trade, it was power. It was access. It was prestige. Putin believed that this window could never close, that the Baltic waters would forever remain Russia's highway into the West. But in 2026, this so-called window is turning into a wall. And not the kind of wall you climb over. The kind that says, stop right there, you're not going anywhere. Because today, the Baltic Sea isn't just a trade route anymore. It's starting to look like a massive prison yard, and NATO is building the fence. What makes this whole situation terrifying isn't just one big move. It's the fact that NATO is running a three-layer choking strategy, like a steel net closing from every direction. Air, no freedom in the sky. Sea, shadow fleet is now a target land, borders becoming death zones. And once you connect the dots, you realize this isn't random, this is coordinated, this is calculated. This is NATO saying, we won't just weaken you economically, we'll remove your ability to move. Now here's where it starts getting humiliating for Russia. You see, Russian aircraft have been playing this ghost flight game for years. They take off from the western edge of Russia, near Kaliningrad and the St. Petersburg region, and switch off their transponders. Why? Because with transponders off, you become harder to track, you become more ambiguous, you become annoying. It's like sneaking behind someone in the dark just to say, look at me, I'm dangerous. But something changed in January 2026. Those flights are no longer routine harassment, no longer testing NATO. Now, they're being treated like serious hostile provocations. And NATO's response is brutal. Russian Su-30 fighter jets, An-26 aircraft, turning off transponders, trying to play invisible. NATO jets intercept them within minutes. Within minutes. Meaning you're not flying freely anymore. You're flying inside a monitored cage. A cage where the guards already have their hands on the trigger. And this is where the psychological pressure gets heavy. Because now Russian pilots don't know what's allowed anymore. What used to be a show of force could now become a deadly engagement anytime. And let's be real, once a Russian jet is shot down in that region, we are no longer talking about tensions. We are talking about a direct NATO-Russia crisis. So this first layer matters because it sends one simple message. The Baltic skies are locked. You're not welcome. Now this is where things get truly serious. Because if the skies are bad news, the sea is a nightmare. Russia has survived sanctions largely because of one dirty secret: the shadow fleet. Old tankers, uninsured ships, ships hiding ownership, ships switching flags like criminals changing outfits. For years, these ships were Russia's cheat code, moving oil around the world while pretending sanctions don't exist. And it worked. Until it didn't. Because on January 7th, 2026, something happened that changed the rules. A Russian flag tanker, Marinara Bella 1, was seized. And here's the bombshell. It wasn't seized by pirates. It wasn't seized by a random small country. It was seized through a NATO-linked operation involving US naval assets with British Royal Navy support.
Finland has struck directly at Russia's so-called shadow fleet, releasing dramatic footage of its border guard boarding and seizing a Russian-linked cargo ship in a high seas operation that has raised regional alarm. What began as a suspected act of sabotage at sea has now escalated into a full-blown diplomatic flashpoint in the Baltic, sharpening tensions between Helsinki, Moscow, and their European allies.
Meaning the West didn't just sanction the fleet, they touched it, they boarded it, they took control. And that is a psychological earthquake. because the Shadow Fleet survived on one belief: they won't dare stop us. Now NATO has basically said, oh yes, we will, and we'll do it publicly. And there's an even darker layer. Reports suggest Russia even had submarine presence in the region, but it didn't stop the seizure. So what does that tell us? It tells us something frightening. Even Russia's nuclear shadow is no longer enough to protect its commercial lifelines. So the Marinara seizure isn't just about one ship. It's symbolic. It's NATO tearing up the old rulebook and writing a new one. Your gray zone logistics are no longer safe. From this point on, every ship leaving St. Petersburg or Kaliningrad carries a new fear. Will we make it home? Will we be seized next? Will insurance even cover this? Will captains refuse to sail? Because yes, captains are human beings. They don't want to be heroes for Putin's oil profits. They want to survive. So this seizure hits Russia where it hurts most: oil money. And oil money is not just money. Oil money is tanks, fuel, salaries, war funding regimes, survival, cut that cash flow, and suddenly Moscow's war machine begins to cough, then stall. Now if the air is locked and the sea is being hunted, Russia might say, fine, we move by land, except the land is turning into a death zone. Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. They are no longer treating the border like a checkpoint. They are treating it like the edge of a battlefield. Fortifications are rising, barbed wires, surveillance, anti-tank concrete blocks, dragon's teeth, and thousands of anti-personnel mines. Poland's East Shield project is transforming the border into a modern iron curtain. And this is where Kaliningrad becomes a hostage, because Kaliningrad is Russia's outpost inside Europe. But if land routes tighten, Kaliningrad becomes isolated, starved, strategically vulnerable. It turns into a burden Moscow has to feed but can't reach. So NATO doesn't even need to invade Kaliningrad to neutralize it. They just need to make it impossible to supply. That's warfare without firing bullets. And honestly, that's the kind of warfare Russia hates, because it's effective. Now, let's connect the dominoes. 1. Shadow Fleet paralysis. After that tanker seizure, ship owners and captains panic. Nobody wants to move Russian oil anymore. Insurance companies get cold feet. Transport dries up. Revenue shrinks. 2. Civilian crisis in the western regions. Energy, food supplies become uncertain. People panic. Supermarkets get emptied. Gas stations get long queues. Banks get rushed. War isn't only on battlefields anymore. War is in kitchens. 3. The eastern supply route gets hit. And here is the twist that makes this global. Russia has been leaning on China and Central Asia as lifelines, but Western pressure is spreading. As early 2026 begins, over 5,000 Russian trucks carrying goods from China were blocked at the Kazakhstan border. Not consumer goods alone. We're talking microchips, drone parts, electronic circuits, the brain of modern warfare. So now look at the nightmare picture. West Sea route, choking West airspace, locked. West land routes, fortified East supply chain, blocked. That means Russia is being trapped from both sides. And when a country gets trapped like that, its war machine doesn't die from one punch. It dies from suffocation. So when you stand back and look at the whole board, you realize Putin's Baltic window to Europe is closing. And not slowly, it's slamming shut. And the worst part? This isn't just NATO flexing power. This is NATO testing a new concept: physical strangulation of a nuclear superpower without direct war. And if this strategy works here, then the next question becomes very uncomfortable. Because if Russia can be boxed in like this, who else can? And what happens when Putin finally decides he has nothing left to lose? Because trapped men don't act calmly. Trapped empires don't negotiate politely. They lash out, and that is where the real danger begins. All right, let's pick up from where we left off, because what we're watching right now is not just another Russia versus NATO tension. No, this is bigger. This is the kind of situation that makes world leaders lose sleep and makes generals stare at maps like they're reading the last page of a horror novel. Because the Baltic Sea, the place Putin has treated like a sacred red line for years, has now turned into something else entirely. Let me say it clearly. The Baltic Sea has officially become a NATO lake. And Russia is standing at the edge of that lake, like a man who built a mansion near the water, only to realize the water now belongs to his enemies. For decades, Moscow projected power into the Baltic like it was normal. Russian ships moved, Russian jets buzzed. Russian intelligence worked quietly. But in 2026, the Baltic is no longer a playground. It's now a monitored cage, a prison where every Russian ship in port is basically being told, you can stay inside, but don't try anything funny. And here's what really sealed the deal. Sweden and Finland are now fully integrated into NATO's structure. This is the nightmare Russia spent years trying to prevent. Because once Finland and Sweden fully align with NATO, the Baltic becomes a natural trap. Finland presses from the north. Poland holds the west like a bulldog. The Baltic states tighten the noose. So Russia is not just surrounded politically, it is surrounded geographically. And geography doesn't care about speeches, propaganda, or nuclear threats. Now let's talk about what might be the most embarrassing part for Moscow. Poland closed the last Russian consulate in Gdansk. This isn't small. It's not just, oh, diplomats are leaving, bye-bye. No, this is Poland saying, we know what you're doing, and we're done pretending. Gdansk wasn't just a building with flags. It was one of Russia's key intelligence listening posts, a place where Moscow could collect information, recruit, coordinate, observe. So when Poland shuts that down, it's like cutting off Russia's binoculars. It's like blinding Russia's eyes and ears in Europe. And the symbolic part is brutal. Gdansk was historically a symbol of Russia's influence in the Baltic. Now, it's a ghost building. Doors locked, sign removed, staff expelled. That's not a diplomatic move. That's a geopolitical slap, a loud one, because it sends one message. Russia no longer has diplomatic immunity in NATO territory. And this is the bigger humiliation. Russia is supposed to be a global power, a nuclear superpower. But what kind of superpower is this? Can't control Kazakhstan, can't protect ships on international waters, can't fly without being chased, can't keep consulates open, can't stop Finland and Estonia from humiliating it publicly. This paints the picture of something Putin never wanted the world to see. A nuclear power that looks powerless. Yes, Russia has missiles, but a missile cannot escort oil tankers, legally stop inspections, force insurance companies to comply, reopen consulates, undo maritime law enforcement. And that's the real genius of what NATO is doing. They're not fighting Russia where Russia is strongest. They're fighting Russia where it is weakest. Logistics law, inspections, trade routes, supply chains, cash flow. That is modern warfare, not tanks, not flags, bottlenecks. Now listen carefully. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte basically warned the alliance must be ready. That sounds simple, but it's not. Because for years, NATO's posture was, we respond if Russia acts. But now, it's starting to look like NATO is moving towards something more aggressive. Preemptive containment, meaning we stop Russia before it even breathes. And when the West starts thinking like that, that is when Russia gets truly nervous. Because there's no longer space to test boundaries. You touch something, you get intercepted. You sabotage, you get seized. You spy, you get shut down. Now when we zoom out, the picture is terrifying. In the West, Baltic Gate locked. In the North, Arctic route pressured and sabotaged. In the East, Kazakhstan Gate becomes a wall. Inside Russia, railways burning, economy bleeding. And suddenly Russia, the empire that once projected influence everywhere, begins to look like a massive isolation ward. A giant enclosed space, locked inside its own geography, surrounded by NATO steel. And if you're Putin, that is humiliation on a level that can cause reckless decisions. And here's the most poetic part. The Iron Curtain is back. But this time, it isn't Russia lowering it, it's the West. Russia didn't build the wall. Russia is the one trapped behind it. And the message is cold. The Baltic is closed to you. Putin's promise of stability is sinking with every seized tanker, with every dark transponder, with every closed embassy door, with every mined border, and every blocked truck. Now here's what makes this global. NATO just discovered a formula, how to cripple Russia, without entering direct nuclear confrontation. That is extremely important, because if this works, this model can be applied elsewhere. This maritime lawfare doctrine, this combination of legal enforcement, inspections, seizures, supply chain strangulation, diplomatic expulsion, it sets a precedent for future conflicts. Russia may have hypersonic missiles, but those missiles cannot pass environmental inspection. Those missiles cannot convince a ship captain to risk prison. Those missiles cannot make insurance companies cooperate. So Russia is losing in the arena where it cannot win. Economics and law. And now certain dates have become symbolic. December 17th, Estonia warning, December 20th, Sweden raid December 30th, Finland operation. These aren't just dates, they're milestones of collapse. The vital link between St. Petersburg and Kaliningrad is being severed. The shadow fleet has been exposed, and the energy blackmail is backfiring. The Baltic Sea is no longer a route out. It's an 80-kilometer dead-end street. So now Putin faces a brutal question. Does he deploy the fleet and attempt to break the blockade? Or does he sit and watch as $100 million a day evaporates and Kaliningrad slowly suffocates? Either choice has consequences. If he fights, escalation risk. If he waits, economic collapse. That's why it's a stalemate. Russia cannot retreat without humiliation, but cannot attack without danger. And that's the perfect trap. So the big question is this the moment Russia is finally contained? Or the moment Russia becomes desperate enough to ignite something bigger? Because history has taught us one thing. When empires feel cornered, they don't go quietly. So, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think Putin will try to break this Baltic blockade? Or will he accept the slow suffocation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep analysis like this, support the work by liking the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. Thanks for watching.